Joining us now with reaction is Fox News contributor and former U.S. ambassador to the UN, John Bolton. All right, good evening, Ambassador. It seems that we've never been closer to the brink of a nuclear war than we are right now. Is that a correct statement?
Well, I think we're at a crisis point, undoubtedly, because of the progress that North Korea has made on its nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs, particularly in the last 8 years. So Donald Trump inherits really 25 years of a failed policy of trying to negotiate North Korea out of these programs, and his options are few and not very good.
You know what's interesting, Ambassador, is the fact that the president, and he's been criticized for his rhetoric, but the president is making it very clear that he is prepared and ready, locked and loaded, to defend the American people and our territories as well. What's wrong with that?
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You know, we've had 25 years of American politicians, Democrats and Republicans, standing up and saying solemnly, it is unacceptable for North Korea to have nuclear weapons. Same thing for Iran. Well, now we're being told by the same people who said we could negotiate North Korea out of these weapons, say basically, you know, I guess we've got to accept that that they're going to have nuclear weapons. Susan Rice wrote about it in the New York Times this morning on television. She said, I guess our policies failed, and now they're telling us we do have to accept it. I think that's not where Trump is, and that's not where we should be as a people. We should not allow ourselves to be held hostages by this erratic regime and the threat of nuclear terrorism against our country.
You know, without looking backward for too long, I mean, do you see the way that some of the administrations, particularly the Clinton administration, giving money to North Korea, and then the parallel of the Obama administration giving money to Iran? I mean, do you see that the appeasement that seems to be going on is only to our detriment, and that it is time for us to stand up, because these bullies are at the point where the Iranians yell death to America, death to the big devil, the little devil, Israel and the United States? I mean, what are we supposed to do, turn around and put our tail behind our legs?
Yeah, no, look, I think the legacy of policies over the past 25 years has been appeasement, and it's not the first time it's been called appeasement. Former Secretary of State Jim Baker, right after the Clinton administration signed the agreed framework, wrote an op-ed in the New York Times that called the Clinton administration policy appeasement. That was 20 years ago. It hasn't worked. So unless you want to have a future where North Korea can threaten the United States with nuclear-tipped missiles, you have to look either at one more diplomatic play to convince China to reunite the peninsula with us in a constructive way and eliminate North Korea, or you have to look at the military option. People are worried about the difficulty, the chaos that might create today. The risk is real. What about the chaos when North Korea launches missiles at the United States?
Well, yeah, it's almost as though, and by the way, Kim Jong-un is putting a time period on it by the middle of August. But what's interesting is it's come out that there are back-channel negotiations that began with Otto Warmbier, the American university student who was sent home in a coma and died shortly thereafter, and Tillerson saying, you know, that we will always consider negotiation, even at the point that we're at right now. What option does America have right now?
Well, there is no option to negotiate with North Korea. We've tried it for 25 years. It's failed. Just cite, for those who believe in it, cite one piece of evidence to think it will succeed in year 26. I think that's why the president's inherited such an unhappy situation. I do think it's worth trying with China on an expedited basis to convince them it's in China's national interest.
How do we do that,
North
Ambassador?
Korea.
How do we convince China? I mean, the president has done everything, you know, privately and publicly, and China says, hey, look, if America strikes first, and there's a whole issue as to whether or not that makes us the aggressor if we're trying to defend ourselves, then the question is, I mean, you know, China says they're going to fight with North Korea against us.
Well, they also said that if we were retaliating against North Korea, they would stand aside. And that's a significant development. I think there's a chunk of Chinese decision makers who think North Korea is a pretty ugly piece of baggage. I think there's a deal that can satisfy China on reunification. It's a hard argument. I wish we had started it 10 years ago, but better late than never, because otherwise the American people have a choice. Live with a nuclear North Korea and the threats and nuclear bribery that will entail forever, or do what the politicians said. Do not accept a nuclear North Korea. That could well involve a military option of some sort.
All right, Ambassador John Bolton, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.